Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a tilting windmill dragon. This is a bit of a janky variant just because it's, not perfect, of course. Mainly because I don't have the top end to really support the full tilting package. If I did, it would be absolutely busted. I mean, Eyes is crazy strong as it is, especially since it's basically a Genesis replacement, and comboing it in this deck in particular allows for 23 damage off the burst without any evolve at all, which is in itself just an absolutely crazy amount of damage. Other than that, yeah, you get the board clear, you get the damage, you can deal mad amounts. It's crazy to think about. But this on its own is actually still quite good. With Bahamut and Queen and one evolve point, you got, 18 damage I think, straight off it. With Queen and Israfil, if there is no water, you can also do 19 damage, which is pretty good with the evolve. So those options are always quite nice. You can also use the Frenzied Drake or Sybil just as pressure when comboed out, or you can use the 1 Imperial Dragoon, lower that to 0 and use it as a 5/5 body. Imperial Dragoon I'm very iffy on, I'm probably going to take that out, but at the moment I'm happy with how this deck functions. Tilting Windmills at a high enough rate now that you can draw it with 2 Uriels and 2 Tiltings just fine. I don't feel like that's too much. Fall from Grace, the tech card to beat out anything trying to stop my tilting at Windmills, mostly to beat out decks like Roland or Portal, which is becoming more popular to counter this, so it's not too surprising. Like I've mentioned many times before, not the biggest dragon fan, hence why I don't have everything to build a perfect dragon deck, but I do like to show you guys some of the dragon decks and how they function, or at least the basics to them. So this is a very basic version of dragon. I'd highly recommend searching out for a more optimized tilting windmill deck. Otherwise, this is still not bad. It's definitely not good, but I would say it's definitely above that 50% win rate that you'd want for a deck. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and we'll get right into some games. So our first match is against Portal. Portal is one of the more interesting matches because Dragon obviously doesn't have that many good things to actually deal with the the amulet, the entity amulet, that really limits your damage, and Portal now is taking that pretty hard. If you watched my previous Portal video, it's a great way to counter these dragons. But if Portal doesn't expect it, or you just get really good ramp, usually you're going to win before they can do anything anyway, so it's really an iffy match unless you are a good Portal player. Of course, it's just a lot more difficult to win if you are a bad Portal player in this kind of matchup. Whereas Dragon, you don't really need to be a good player to win with this deck in particular. Usually you can just roll them out pretty consistently as long as you know the couple of main key combos you're looking for with tilting, Sarkwill, those sort of things. You're going to be fine. So Tranquil Clog, nothing too surprising. Looks like they're a very weird Portal deck, so not too big a worry for this one. I do decide to use Uriel to draw out tilting at Windmill, even though I already have one, mainly because 1, that curved out perfectly into turn 4. 2, getting the other tilting out of my deck means 1 less card that I'm going to worry about drawing into later, so I can draw into more consistent things. They're both nice things to do. Breath Salamander on the 2/1. I want to limit as much chip damage as I can so that I can just drop my stuff. So the easier it's going to be to remove things, the better, and considering we already have Sarkwill and Israfil, clearing should not be an issue at all. And we're probably looking at next turn being the more awkward one because I did use Salamander turn 5 instead of turn 6. But I'm really not too worried about that. A couple of damage here and there, not a big concern to me, and we draw Sybil anyway, so that fits quite nicely into that curve there without too much concern at all.
A dance to make the world blue.
Portal, not doing too much to me. Like I said, we're basically absorbing all their damage anyway.
Neither human nor
Synthetic Beast, at least it gets to clear this. That's probably the only bonus to them using that now. But we're going to have 8 points, which means tilting can just be dropped. I'm not worried about Portal clearing tilting at all. I can't think of anything they've actually got that can clear it. Not unless they are taking in their own Fall from Grace, which, if you're running Portal, really recommend that you wouldn't do that. It's just not a good idea. The Entity Amulet is more than enough normally, and taking in another card that's just probably awkward or dead is really risky in a Portal deck, especially when you're discarding so many cards. Having a 4-drop that really isn't that substantial, not very good. So going in with 9 points, we can go Sackville, Israfil. This will clear out the entire board once I add a evolve point to it.
So sorrowful.
Plus, if we want, we can drop the Dragon Oracle for some draw. The advantage with the way that tilting works is you can still play Sackville, get the 4 damage off that, or use it to trade, which is what the example I've used here. And then Israfil comes back to your hand because Israfil is summoned and not played, whereas tilting Windmills requires you to play a card. It really makes things a lot easier. And they've spent their whole turn basically playing Death, so not too surprising. They're only going to maybe be able to play another 1 card out. Yeah, so Mystic Artifact, kind of annoying. Basically kind of forces me to play Bahamut here instead of playing Israfil. I probably would have preferred Israfil just because I can basically just ram it to face for 12. But I think Bahamut's going to be more than enough to really secure this game. Or if not, bring us very, very close to winning. Plus, having 2 tiltings in hand is actually fairly reasonable when you consider the fact that some classes are going to be able to remove your Windmill, especially things like Blood. So Deus Ex Machina again, they mustn't have anything else they can play, otherwise you would if you're playing Portal. Again though, another ward. This is what you want to be doing as Portal, warding up, blocking out the damage that I could deal. That's usually your best bet. Not so lucky for them is I do get another Bahamut, so all I have to do is last basically this turn, and that's it. So clearing this 2-1 just to make sure we don't die to, say, a Beast play, because Beast should have a reasonable stat line at this point, and with an Evolve could be risky. Actually, I don't think Beast gains Evolve point anyway, but not the biggest deal anyway. 4-2 for me, good. Remove it, puts a threat on board. If they did have Synthetic Beast and dropped it, probably wouldn't be enough over there now. And I've got Bahamut for lethal. Could also use Isra because they didn't play any more wards. Would have worked out either way.
This is great.
Next up, we're playing against Forest. So Forest is still reasonably weak, I would say, overall, especially considering Elephant is a reasonable amount slower than Dragon right now, especially with tilting and Windmills. Unless Forest can really drag the match out, which they do a pretty good job at overall anyway, they could have a chance, but I think Blood and Forest are just in awkward spots in rotation currently, and unless something big happens, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I mean, Shadow has both Reanimate Shadow and Mid Shadow, both are still quite good, although I haven't seen any Mid Shadow today, which is really surprising. And Dragon's got Tilting, which is pretty strong now as well, thanks to the Bahamut. And other than that, Burn Rune, really the Magic Illusionist, reasonable hit, but I still think that with the core cards it has, is still a pretty solid deck. It may not be absolutely top tier now, like dominating and unanswerable, but it's still going to be extremely powerful. It's just going to take a few days for things to settle down so we know what we're looking at going forward. Which I'm sure by the time this video actually goes out, that will be the case, because as always, all my videos are done a little bit in advance, just so I can work on other projects and other things that I'm doing for either the Shadow Nexus, my own channel, or just take a break. You never really know, so... Plus, we do have a tournament coming up. If you guys haven't seen that on my channel, we have a little promo trailer I put together for the Shadow Nexus SEAO event, so Southeast Asia Oceanic event, mainly based for time zone. Otherwise, everyone can enter, excluding North Asia regions, just because of community prizing. Otherwise, we would include the world. Hopefully, that will change eventually, but who knows? So, not too much exciting really goes on for the most part in these initial stages. They're really just playing the board, answering threats. That's basically it, as much as they can. I do have Tilting, which is actually going to be a pretty solid play over the next few turns, especially since they haven't got anything too substantial on board yet. So being able to get Tilting out early enough is pretty good, although the only major problem I've got now is I don't really have the draw with Queen of the Dread. I don't have anything that can actually combo off that really effectively. But dealing with this 4-6 is actually going to be pretty easy. I can basically double Breath of the Salamander, completely remove this, Even though I don't like the idea of wasting both, I think that's the best idea. And as you can see, I still really feel that Imperial Dragoon. I think it's probably the most awkward card in this deck so far, just because you never have a big enough hand to really warrant using it. But on the flip side, a one-of is pretty okay. But if you were going to run Irons, which I highly recommend, I would definitely probably drop Dragoon and a few other things and really fill this deck out. Consider doing it, but considering the next changes are around the 15th of February to the 16th of February, it really seems kind of pointless to go all in on Dragon and build a full tilting Windmill deck when I just don't see the worth in it yet. So pretty much a perfect draw here. The Bahamut plus the Queen, more than enough damage, especially with an Evolve. As long as you don't stuff up your ordering, you can get good amounts of damage and go for lethal pretty quickly.
Whoa, you're strong.
So again, this deck isn't the most optimized deck by far. This is literally just something I've kind of thrown together myself based on ramp dragon decks and things I've seen in the past, working with the cards that I've got. Sometimes that's what you've got to do. You work with what you've got to build something interesting, and this deck, surprisingly, I would say is at least a 50-50 for me. I haven't had anything too negative, I also haven't had anything too crazy. Of course, I could definitely see the normal tilting Windmill being absolutely crazy if you don't counter it properly, but other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button, subscribe, you'll find a link in the description below, along with any other links that are important to the Shadowverse community. I always have them down there, so make sure to check that out, and I'll catch you again next time. See ya.